Moving on. People in Wales need to limit their speed to 20 miles an hour in built-up areas such as villages and town centres.
But our People's Poll has revealed that 70% of you do not support reducing speed limits in built-up areas. So is it all a waste of time?
Well, join us now to discuss this is criminal lawyer and road safety campaigner Nick Freeman. So, Nick, a resounding 70% of people polled for GB News said they want to put the brakes on this, what they see as a war on motorists. Where do you stand?
Well, I think there should be a reduced speed limit in certain circumstances, a dynamic speed limit. I mean, the situation in Wales is really quite ridiculous. You're 3 times more likely to be killed on a rural road, and most of the roads in Wales are rural. What's interesting in Wales is, first of all, there was a poll before the speed limit was introduced, and the vast majority of people were in favour of it, and they've now done an about turn because they realise actually it doesn't make a lot of sense in most cases. So my view is, you know, round school times, opening times, closing times, there should be a temporary limit. In any other sensitive areas, you have a dynamic limit, but the rest of the time you revert back to the 30 mile an hour default limit. That makes sense. I mean, there are so many problems. I mean, first of all, it's going to cost the Welsh economy about £4.5 billion per year. That's the estimate. You hear, of course, that people who live in Wales who are benefiting from this are the residents, but from a mental health perspective. But of course, the drivers are suffering terribly with mental health issues. You're a taxi driver at 3 o'clock in the morning on a deserted road. You're trying to earn your living, and you're having to sit at 20 miles an hour. It just makes no sense. From an environmentally friendly point of view, it's completely neutral. There was some research done by London University Imperial College. It says it makes no difference. So we just need to be proportionate and sensible. And I think most drivers and most people in Wales have cars. Most adults in Wales have cars. They drive, and it just doesn't seem to be sensible. And when you try and enforce something that motorists don't think is sensible, they're not really readily going to comply with it, particularly in the context of our society. You know, unfortunately, burglary is on the increase. And what happens when you get burgled? You get an officer who may or may not come to your house. You may or may not get a crime reference number, and that's about it. So we're living in what's perceived as a largely decriminalised society. But if you just exceed the speed limit in Wales, which is now artificially low, you're going to be done. Another interesting point, and it's a slightly sort of contradictory point within the Welsh system, is they allow, as a general rule, a tolerance zone of 10% plus 2. So that means, you know, if you're travelling at on a motorway, you will not be prosecuted until you reach 80 miles an hour. In England, that tolerance zone is 10% plus 1. But what the Welsh government have said, or what the police officers said, is they're not going to enforce this speed limit in Wales. It's a 10. Sorry, I beg your pardon. In England, it's 10% plus 1. In Wales, it's 10% plus 2. But in Wales, they're actually being given an extra 4 miles an hour as a tolerance zone. So, in fact, in these 20 mile an hour limits, at the moment, you will not be prosecuted unless you're travelling at 27 miles per hour. Which does beg the question, what is the point? You know, I can understand the police saying to people initially, look, you need to be aware. There's been a lot of publicity about it. You need to be aware that there is this speed limit. But if you're going to introduce it into law, then make it count. You have to walk the talk and talk the talk. You don't just say this is what we're going to do and then actually find a way of increasing it to almost 30 miles an hour. It makes no sense. And that may be a temporary gesture.
If I may interject, Nick, well, I think the point is this. Drakeford's scheme costs £33 million to introduce, but he's reckoned to make £9 billion in fines. I put it to you, this isn't about salvation, it's about taxation.
Well, that's how the motorist sees it. The motorist actually sees this as a war on motorists. And whether or not he's right in relation to that figure, the net cost to the economy apparently is £4.5 billion, and I don't hear him talking about that. So whilst there might be a revenue from fines, there's also going to be a huge cost to the economy, and only time will tell, who is the benefit. But obviously, there are two motivations. One is road safety. but road safety has to be sensible. And in my view, this is a misconceived attitude to road safety. And the other approach, of course, is it has to make sense. And you know, we've got quite rightly more cyclists on the road, e-scooters on the road. We don't want motorists to be obsessed with looking at their speedometer, at the excuse of being aware of what is going on around them. We don't want motorists, people sitting in cars, being overtaken by cyclists and being overtaken by e-scooters. It just doesn't make sense from anyone who is sensible's perspective. So we just need to say, look, we all want the roads to be safer. Let's introduce a temporary speed limit, whether it be 20 or 25 miles an hour, when schools are opening, when they're going home, and let's see how that works. And that would have the support of the public. And that just makes sense.
We've got to move on, Nick. But there are other countries, aren't they, which have different speed limits at different times of the day. So if you're on a deserted road at 3 o'clock in the morning, you can drive a bit more quickly as a taxi driver getting home, or a hospital worker, than at 9 o'clock.
Well, absolutely. And it's not just speed limits that those countries operate flexibility, traffic lights as well. So in the evenings in France, for example, you'll have the traffic lights that are just constantly flashing, which means use your common sense, exercise care and caution, and come through when it's sensible. The authorities need to trust the driver. There are only a few idiots on the road, and most drivers will drive sensibly using their experience and judgment.
Absolutely.
And we need to go back to that position where the driver is trusted and not criminalised.
Thank you so much. Always good to see you, criminal lawyer and road safety campaigner Nick Freeman there. Isn't that the truth? Trust us. We're not idiots.
Beautiful.
Right, still to come.